Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where I'm sure you've noticed the entertainment industry continues to reel and try to do damage control, and also just, if they can, stay the heck away from the story that is Harvey Weinstein. Absolutely devastating, causing a lot of soul searching. Everybody seems to want to weigh in on it or is asked to weigh in on it, and that's resulting in a entertainment news cycle that is talking about absolutely nothing else. I think on a side note, it is fascinating to see just how influential Harvey Weinstein was, at least at one point in his career. That almost every big name talent working today has not only worked with Harvey Weinstein, but in many cases owes him gratitude and a debt for what he did for their career. And he tried to call in a couple of favors on that. There's a very interesting response that Jeffrey Katzenberg sent to Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein, I don't know if you heard this. This isn't one of the stories of the day, by the way, but it's interesting, so I wanted to share it with you. And I'll put a link to the Jeffrey Katzenberg thing down below. But right before he was fired from the Weinstein Company that he, of course, co-founded with his brother. Rumor is his brother partially engineered. I don't think if his brother engineered this to get rid of him, I don't think he thought it would blow up quite this way. But Harvey asked a number of people in the industry that he was friends with, who were executives and high-profile people, to back him up and give him a letter to give to the board saying that he had their support. And it's like, he's like, no one will see the letter but the board. And it's like, yeah, that thing's going to leak so fast. Are you crazy? So Jeffrey Katzenberg wrote him back, and I think actually wrote a very, very good letter. And I think it shows the fine line that that so many people are finding themselves having to walk, being like, and Jeffrey Katzenberg said this, it turns out there are two Harveys. One that I, again, am good friends with and owe a lot to and have had a very good working relationship with for decades, and that one that seems to be really a horrible individual. And so Jeffrey Katzenberg, I think because he knew it would leak, decided to, or thought it could potentially leak, decided to share his response, and I thought it was absolutely excellent. So you should check that out. But I wouldn't expect the entertainment news cycle to recover from this until next week. So it's a good time for me to take a personal day. I have to be out of the office all day tomorrow, so there'll be no morning movie news for the rest of the week. But videos will begin again Friday afternoon with a Happy Death Day review and a Gotham review for the episode tomorrow night. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Now let's get to the stories of the day. There's just two, because again, super slow news cycle, but then I have two viewer questions. So the first story of the day is about the Chinese box office, which, as we discussed on Monday, is being called upon to save more and more movies. One of those being Blade Runner 2049, which now desperately needs that Asia money. So a couple of movies have release dates set, and I just want to give you an update on what's going on there. So Blade Runner, interestingly, has moved up its date. It was originally set to open in China on November 10th, but it's been pushed up to October 27th. I believe not only to get away from another Warner Brothers property, which we'll talk about in just a second, but Thor Ragnarok opens day and date globally November 3rd. Well, actually, it opens in Europe about a week earlier, which is, Marvel's. It's been their release strategy for quite some time now. It works for them. They're not going to change it unless it stops working for them. But so now Thor Ragnarok will open in China and the United States, the two biggest movie markets in the world, the same day, November 3rd. And I think Blade Runner wants to make some money before that. Also, it's interesting because South Korea will get Blade Runner tomorrow, and South Korea was a big chunk of change for the first Kingsman. Kingsman also having some trouble, not being quite received as well as I think Fox would like. And I made the comparison that these were the two movies on Monday in Movie Math that were done in by the creative ambitions of their directors. And, perhaps not the best business sense. More so for Denis Villeneuve, but I think Matthew Vaughn as well. Harry Hart, how do you not recognize that he's the true star of your franchise? So we'll see if South Korea can save Kingsman 2, as it significantly helped the first Kingsman, and we'll see what it does for Blade Runner 2049. But we'll have those Korea numbers, Movie Math, on Monday. Then Justice League got its Chinese release date, and it will be day and date globally, not opening early in Europe, November 17th. In fact, the only major country it will not open in on November 17th is Japan. And in the past, this is a good place. It's not huge for the DCEU so far in China. They've gotten about 100 million for both Wonder Woman, a little under 100 for both Wonder Woman and BVS. So of course they're hoping to do the same, if not better, for Justice League. Also, just of note, because The Foreigner opens here in the United States on Friday, that's already been playing in China for a couple of days now over their national holiday frame. So that's been, also they haven't had any foreign films really coming out there because, again, whenever it's a big movie-going period in China, they like to put their own local films up front, and one of those being The Foreigner with star Jackie Chan. As I told you on Movie Math, that's like a co-production between China and the United States, and so far The Foreigner has already grossed 70 million in China. So that's very nice for that movie, especially because it looks so inexpensive to make. So that's what's going on over in the Chinese box office. That's very good news for Blade Runner, and it's good for Thor Ragnarok, and it's good for Justice League. And we'll see how The Foreigner does stateside. Now, the next story is that I'm sure you saw this late yesterday. It was announced by Disney. They said this themselves, that they were shelving Gigantic. We talked about Bride of Frankenstein yesterday, and one of you said, oh, Bride of Frankenstein's shelved, Grace. It was taken off the release schedule. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily shelved. Shelved means we're stopping working on this. You know, it's not like we're dropping it. It's kind of like we're dropping it, but it's like we're going to put a pin in it. But they actually will say something is shelved. If something's taken off the release schedule, it might be on its way to being shelved, but what that really means is like, we are not going to make this release date. Usually you would set a new release date, but I think obviously Universal has a lot of thinking to do when it comes to Dark Universe. But Gigantic, Disney has shelved it. They will not be moving forward with what was going to be their Thanksgiving 2020 release. Coming up, they have Wreck-It Ralph 2. This Thanksgiving is Coco, then they have Wreck-It Ralph 2, then they have Frozen 2, and then it was going to be Gigantic. Thanksgiving is Disney Animation's, like, that's their date. And they're going to have another animated project. They didn't give this date up. They took the property off of it, but they said, don't worry, we'll have something else. Now, Meg LaFave, who of course has been doing a lot of screenwriting for Pixar, she was going to make her directorial debut here, along with Nathan Greeno, who comes from not only Zootopia, I believe, but also I think with Byron Howard worked on Tangled. No, I think Byron Howard was on Zootopia. But so this is kind of a hit for both of them, because this would have been nice, and they couldn't get it off the ground. And the twist here, of course, was not only that it was going to take place in Spain. I thought that was interesting, but maybe they're seeing that, come to think of it, maybe they're seeing the tracking for Coco, and they're like, I don't know if we want to do this again. But the cool thing is that Jack was going to meet a female giant, but not only a female giant, but like a little girl giant, right? We thought the concept art looked absolutely charming from D23. We'll talk about that in a second. And I particularly liked it because it was done by the artist on Giant Days, which is this fabulous comic book series about these three women who are roommates in college from Boom. And I was so happy to see that artist working there. That's a great comic book series, by the way, if you're looking for something to read. But even more interesting was that this had the Frozen songwriters working on it, the Lopez's. And it's pretty bad that, I don't know what's going on with them, but clearly they're reactionary songwriters because, Frozen had so many last-minute changes with them, right? I mean, like, they came up with this with the Let It Go song at the last minute, and they were like, okay, we finally found our song, but the whole entire movie needs to be restructured. So I would be like, I don't know. I mean, they did so much for Frozen, but I'd be like, you guys, you're not helping in the development, situation. Now, 2020 is far away. So this isn't a huge deal. And I think this is one of the downsides of having these conventions like D23 where you have to show stuff and make announcements and reserving release dates so far in advance that, for the most part, people would never have known that Gigantic was being worked on and never worked. It never worked out, right? It would be one of those things that, you'd be doing a Disney animation retrospective years later, and they'd be like, just like now, they're like, we almost made The Little Mermaid back in like the 50s or 40s, but then, we didn't do it and it was shelved, and then they dug it up and, of course, kickstarted the Disney Renaissance. So that's when you would have known about Gigantic. But now, you know about it now, and it already has the stink of failure on it. The other one's a nice little story about how it wasn't The Little Mermaid's time, and now it's like, oh, this just didn't work out. I think the problem at Disney Animation is that they're still lacking a strong single creative force over there. I think Jennifer Lee kind of looked like she was maybe going to emerge as that, of course, the writer of Frozen and co-director. But then I don't think Jennifer Lee knows exactly what she wants to do. I think, she's doing the live action. She did the live action script for A Wrinkle in Time. I mean, she's not really taking a lead over there, right? Glenn Keane wanted to do it, maybe with Tangled, but unfortunately he had I believe a personal issue and he had to leave the project. So that didn't really take. And Rich Moore, he's done some great stuff. Wreck-It Ralph's Zootopia, maybe he will emerge as a leading talent over there. But, originally, of course, they had Walt Disney, who was leading the creative charge. And then Howard Ashman, I think, I really feel bad that Howard Ashman doesn't get the credit he deserves for what he brought to Disney animation. Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and then he helped structure Aladdin before he passed away. But he wasn't just a lyricist; he was a very strong story person who helped do the stories on these movies. And Jeffrey Katzenberg, I think, to some degree, he wasn't popular when he was there, his time at Disney, but he was a very good taskmaster. He kept everybody in control. He kept things going. He did a really good job. Side note: if you've never watched Waking Sleeping Beauty, I've mentioned this before. It is an amazing documentary about how they turned the animation department around at Disney and had the Disney Renaissance. It's fantastic. It's not only good if you like animation, but it's fascinating if you're interested in how Hollywood works and the business side of filmmaking. It talks to you about the creative process, the political situation there. It's just really, really good. And so I think not only is it enjoyable, but I think you'll see the benefit of having somebody who's kind of in charge over there. And I think that they're missing that. I think, John Lasseter is supposed to be, but I think he's spread a little thin, and of course, Pixar is really his baby. All right, so those are the two stories of the day that I wanted to cover. Now I have two interesting viewer questions. Now the first is from Ashes9000, and Ashes has a question about Justice League at the box office. So Ashes says, "Hi Grace, long-time subscriber, but first time asking a question here. Excellent. First, luck of the draw, lucky first time. After watching the new Justice League trailer, I, a DC fan, feel very hopeful that Warner Brothers has finally cracked the code on how to make great DC movies. I don't know. Let's hope. Wonder Woman was great, but I know every DC fan is hoping it wasn't a one-and-done type deal. If the Justice League delivers and meets expectations of fans, do you think that it is possible that this DC movie may outshine the Thor movie in November? Justice League somehow seems kind of new and fresh when it comes to comic book movies, and it looks like Warner Brothers is finally making DC its own thing instead of copying Marvel movies, which is great." I love your enthusiasm, Ashes. I guess to really sum up the question, do you think people are more wanting something new or something familiar when it comes to comic book movies? Love the question. All right, so, and then first, much love to you, Grace, and thanks for all you do. Much love to you too, Ashes. I appreciate that. That's so nice of you. Justice League, it's very important to remember this. Justice League was put into motion and largely filmed before Wonder Woman was released. Of course, it's going through reshoots. There's the Joss Whedon effect or tweak, right? But it's not going to be, the lessons from Wonder Woman are not going to be applied to Justice League. I think that's really important to understand. Justice League, I think, let's just hope it's well received by DC fans. As I said just with the new trailer, fabulous for people who love the DCEU. I don't think it's going to win anybody new over. And I feel that way about the movie itself. So I have serious concerns that Justice League will make $1 billion. I think that if it just gets somewhere in the 8s, like Wonder Woman and Batman v Superman before it, it'll be all good. And then they can just keep moving forward. I think Aquaman will hopefully build on the success of Wonder Woman. I think because Patty Jenkins and James Wan probably have a lot. I think they're very similar type filmmakers. I have a lot of faith in James Wan. So expect that to be the next film that I think truly and officially builds on Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman having turned the corner to some degree for the DCEU. So we're just looking for survival for Justice League and not for it to be a setback. I don't think it's going to be a step forward, I guess is what I'm saying. Now, I don't know about Thor Ragnarok, to be honest with you. I'm hearing that it's a very strong comedy, and they had a clip debut last night on Jimmy Kimmel, which was really comedic, surprisingly comedic, to the point where it's is this just a comedy? If it doesn't have a lot of strong action sequences and a lot of great moments visually, like the trailer did, I don't know how the repeat business on it is going to be. It could end up being more of a Doctor Strange type performer, which is fine. I mean, that would be fabulous for a Thor movie. Don't forget the Thor movies are not strong performers for the Marvel, for the MCU. So, but I think that if Thor tends to be a little bit of a smaller movie and have a little bit of a slower pace and a little more of a ha-ha than a ooh-ooh, that too could end up maybe not being huge. This would all be fabulous for The Last Jedi. They'd be like, thanks for clearing the runway, guys. Let's take off to over $2 billion. I think that what audiences want to see, truly, to answer your question, is a twist on comic book movies. They don't want just traditional comic book movies anymore. I think the Russo brothers have really succeeded with this, with their political thriller take, first on Winter Soldier and then on Civil War. And I'll be interested to see what they do with Infinity War. I think that Wonder Woman was very much an old school Turner Classic Movies, World War I movie, and I think people really appreciated that. And then I think that Fox has had tremendous success doing this with Deadpool, Logan, which was like a Western, and then also the upcoming New Mutants movie, which is supposed to be a horror film. So I think that's what people want to see with comic book movies. They want comic book characters in other types of movies. And I think that's a great idea. I think it's very fresh, and I think it should continue to move that way. And I think Josh Trank should get some credit for trying to make the first horror comic book movie with Fantastic Four until Fox said no and didn't have enough faith in him and messed it up. I still stand by the first 2/3 of Fantastic Four. That Doctor Doom breakout sequence in the facility is really, really good. So that's the first question. Second question is from Sophie Amelie. And Sophie Amelie has a great question also. So Sophie says, hello, Grace. Question, I'm wondering which movie has the better chances of winning the Production Cinematography Oscar this year? Blade Runner 2049 or Dunkirk? Both have amazing craftsmanship behind the camera, in my opinion. Dunkirk was a box office success in a way, and Blade Runner 2049 seems to be doomed with this week's headlines. Does the box office factor into winning? Would the Academy give Blade Runner 2049 an Oscar even if it was a financial flop? I would be really pleased to hear your thoughts. Greetings from Germany. I watch your videos every day. I appreciate that, Sophie. And that's a great question. I'm going to take it beyond cinematography, though. I'm going to take it to... and both cinematographers, by the way, very respected. But I'm going to take it to just in general because I think people feel that both Dunkirk and Blade Runner 2049 should be contenders across the board. So I feel that Dunkirk has the edge, but not totally. And there's a surprising twist to this. But between these two movies, I think that Blade Runner 2049 is such a flop and has been rejected to such a degree, so strongly out of the gate, that I think Warner Brothers, which is behind both movies, they have to pick who they're going to push. And I think they're going to go for Dunkirk, as they should. Villeneuve is coming off of Arrival last year. He already did his Oscar rounds. He's already a celebrated filmmaker. And this is really Nolan's turn. I strongly feel, still to this day, that Nolan made Dunkirk so he could get a freaking Oscar already. I don't think that he will, to be perfectly honest with you. But, I think that, people feel that this is the Oscar movie from Nolan, and so I think it's going to get a little bit more attention. And also, Dunkirk has Christopher Nolan being his quote-unquote turn. We know the Academy loves to think that way. It has very strong reviews, as does Blade Runner, but Dunkirk also has the box office. So and also very strong support from Nolanites, right? Where I've seen support. Like Mad Max Fury Road had a lot of fan support. People were like, please nominate our movie. You didn't do it for The Dark Knight. Are you going to really do this to us again? But, a lot of even fans, quote unquote, the fanboy audience online has turned on Blade Runner, so or has decided not to back it very strongly. So there's really nothing there to reward. So between the two, and again, there's a choice that has to be made here because it's the same studio and they only have so much money in their budget. And don't forget, they're pushing Wonder Woman 2 over there. They're not going to push all of them. So I think they're going to push Dunkirk really hard. However, this is the twist. I heard from some people who saw The Darkest Hour at the Hamptons Film Festival over the weekend that The Darkest Hour is a whole lot about Dunkirk. It's very much like what's happening with the UK government on the other side of the ocean. The English Channel between France and everything about Dunkirk is about what's happening here, and this is everything that's happening back home and the decisions that had to be made. So that's another Dunkirk movie. That's 3 Dunkirk movies this year. I talked to you about the other one with. I think it's called Their Finest, which I thought was a pretty good movie actually. I think Dunkirk actually is the weakest. I haven't seen Darkest Hour, but I suspect it's the weakest of the 3 Dunkirk movies. Although I think, as usual, his work will be rewarded across the board from a craftsmanship perspective. So he might win that cinematography award, to answer your question, Sophie Amelie. And Blade Runner 2049 might be nominated, but I think it's unlikely that it would win. But I think The Darkest Hour, which is considered a very strong frontrunner across the board, could maybe steal Dunkirk's thunder. Because it's the same subject matter, and they can't nominate a bunch of Dunkirk movies. They just don't work that way, especially when there are other really exciting and I think fresher choices. Like again, Wonder Woman and Get Out. I know a lot of you don't believe me about Wonder Woman, but really you should prepare yourself. And some of you are like, why not Logan? Fox just isn't pushing it hard enough, and I think people just didn't follow. It didn't have the staying power. Wonder Woman was an all-summer event. Logan did really well, then it went away. It hasn't stuck around. And I think that's partially because Hugh Jackman's working so hard to promote The Greatest Showman, which is his awards contender this year. He's hoping to get nominated for that movie. He should have put everything behind Logan. It's unfortunate. Maybe that's the problem there. He should have, just focused on Logan this year, but he's not going to because he wants his Greatest Showman movie to get that attention. So anyway, prepare yourself for Wonder Woman and Get Out nominations across the board, which I think would be fabulous. I think that would be a lot of growth. That would demonstrate a lot of growth for the Academy. All right, so anyway, that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. I apologize. There won't be any more episodes until next week. But again, it's a very slow news week. Justifiably so. This is something that's going to take a lot of healing with the Weinstein situation. So anyway, write your thoughts down below about the 2 stories and the 2 viewer questions, anything you'd like to see covered on Monday, and of course, any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.